Okay, the October 24th, 2024 meeting of the Corvallis School Board is called to order at 6:32 p.m. In the interest of public health and safety for all community members, especially immunocompromised individuals and their families, the Corvallis School Board will continue to offer a virtual option for board member and district personnel participation. Additionally, public comment is available at some meetings both in person and virtually. Information about how to provide public comment is available on the Corvallis School District website. The board agenda and packet, as well as the link to the district YouTube channel, are available on the school board page on the district website. Public meetings are live streamed on the district's YouTube channel, and a recording is posted to the same channel typically the day after the meeting. Today we have Sammy.
Corvallis School District 509J, Acknowledgement of Native American Heritage Month, Resolution Number 211003. Whereas the Corvallis School District recognizes and pays tribute to the significant contributions made in our community by Native American people, which includes American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians, as well as Indigenous people from Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, and the broader Pacific Islands. And whereas the Corvallis School District affirms that Native American students, families, staff, and community members should be valued for all aspects of their identities. And
whereas Rev Sherman, I read on the long run. Whereas Native American Heritage Month grew out of efforts began by Dr. Arthur C. Parker of the Senecas Nation, work with the Boy Scouts of America in adopting American Indian Day in 1912, and whereas Rev Sherman Coolidge of the Arapaho Nation, and then president of the Congress of the American Indian Association, first proclaimed American Indian Day on September 28th, 1915, then calling on the nation to observe this day, and
whereas Red Fox James of the Blackfoot Nation traveled across the country on horseback to gain endorsement of 24 state governments to hold a day to honor Native Americans nationally before presenting it to the White House on December 14th, 1915. And whereas American Indian Day was first declared May 1916 in the state of New York. And
whereas Native American Awareness Week was first proclaimed nationally in 1976, and whereas what was then called National American Indian Heritage Month was first proclaimed nationally in 1990, and whereas the Kalapuya people have called the Corvallis area and Willamette Valley home since time immemorial, and
whereas the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians continue to maintain their ancestral and cultural connections to the Corvallis area and broader Willamette Valley. And whereas there are countless cultural heritages represented by Native American peoples, and whereas the state of Oregon has a documented history of anti-Indigenous actions based on colonization, which includes genocide, forced removals, deprivation, broken treaties, and the outlaw of Native American cultural practices. And
Whereas education has been misused as a tool of colonization in Oregon, serving to sever Native American children from their families, languages, and cultural heritages through boarding/residential schools, beginning with the Indian Training School at Forest Grove, which later moved and became Chemawa Indian School in Salem, and
whereas Native American Heritage Month provides an opportunity to continue the district's growth in learning about the many contributions of Native American people to the nation, world, and local community, and
whereas education is a necessary component for creating a more equitable and anti-racist community, nation, and world, and whereas the Corvallis School District has made a commitment to equity and anti-racism, and whereas the Corvallis School District has a responsibility to honor and respect the diverse histories of our community, and
whereas the Corvallis School District believes each and every student must be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, language, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community. Therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Education of the Corvallis School District does hereby proclaim November 2021, as well as each November annually, as Native American Heritage Month in the district, and strongly encourages students, families, staff, and community members to join in existing local celebrations, and encourages all schools in the district to help highlight this month in great appropriate ways, as well as highlight the contributions of Native American peoples to the local community, nation, and beyond, both historically and in current times. Adopted by the Board of Directors of School District Number 501J Corvallis of Benton and Lynn Counties, Oregon, at its regular meeting this 21st day of October 2021.
Thank you all. That's we like to reread all our resolutions, even though we said that they will continue on from that first one, as a reaffirmation of the school district's commitment to them. And the next item on the agenda is our student representative reports. I don't know who would like to go first.
Our report this time is a little different. It's a letter from a former student that was given to Eric that he wanted us to read.
I will now read it aloud. I gave it a long thought. I remember sitting there debating whether a piece of paper really could determine whether I made it or not. This wasn't just any paper. This would soon be my diploma, encased in a soft, firm leather folder, the only thing someone could never take from me. But it wasn't about that. What held value is the meaningful lessons I learned in school, the many things that are taught to navigate life and problems, the building that held joy with students of all backgrounds and all ethnicities, the building where you could walk in with a mad face and be greeted by the sweet office ladies with a simple smile and a soothing good morning, the only building where adults hold smiles all day while actively listening to the many problems that are being told by students. What others may call lame and boring, I call it an adventure, a new path every day where you may never know what you might be writing about in your next English class. Whether it is scary or horrifying or even just a sad story, it could be a life-changing moment that happened. But one thing you can count on is that there will always be an active ear ready to listen to your amazing work you've created. That's how it is here at College Hill, and I wouldn't change a thing. If I could leave a 5-star review on this place, I would, not only for the amazing teachers, but for the many valuable life lessons and skills they have shown and taught me.
That's a 5-star review.
This school year has been marked with a visibly higher student spirit. Our student government implemented the Raider Pride Point system in an effort to increase class spirit. Students can earn points for their class by going to sport meets, winning assembly games, and posting their outfits during Spirit Week on Instagram. Class points will be counted at the end of each semester, and the winning class gets crumble cookies and a free period from their advisor. So far, this system is working really well. We've seen a large increase in student participation at assemblies, class cheers, and more students are wearing matching outfits for Spirit Week and sharing the positive spirit on social media. Other leadership projects happening in November include the Blood Drive, Canned Food Drive, Cultural Candy Day, and Powder Puff. Today is the CV vs. CHS rivalry soccer game for both girls and boys, and November 1st is the football rivalry at CV as well as senior night. On Wednesday, the cross-country team had its first and only home meet in Crystal Lake Park, and it was co-hosted by CV and CHS, our athletes showcased their incredible talent on the beautiful fall trail. Top finishers got a taste of fresh, delicious pies as well as cookies made by parent volunteers. Over the past month, the CV robotics team Control-C and Control-V participated in 3 off-season competitions: Girls' Generation, First Chance, and Storm Surge. These competitions are designed to give new and female or non-binary members a chance to lead the team and drive the robot. Students are able to get a feel of competition setting and be prepared for the upcoming competition season. We also had our beginning of the year club fair last month where 300 students explored the various clubs at CV. There were some concerns about fundraising because bake sales are a main source of fundraising for most clubs, and there seems to be a new policy that doesn't allow for food to be sold at school. So,
Awesome. Thanks you all for your reports. And the next item on the agenda is our city housing update. And we have Paul Bilotta doing a presentation for us. I hope I said your last name right.
Yeah, pretty close.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm Paul Bilotta, and before I dive in here, we're going to throw a lot of numbers at you, threw a lot of them already at you. They call economics the dismal science for a reason, but I do want to just acknowledge that what is going on right now is real. I mean, it's hurting people's lives. You've got budgetary pieces. I've got my oldest daughter's a second grade teacher. We talk about housing a lot. I've got 2 other daughters starting their career and ending college. We've had to try to hire people and had them also tell us they can't come because of housing. So I'm going to understand this is going on, but I'm going to hit to the numbers here as well.
And before you start, I just want to thank you for coming.
Oh, sure.
And bringing this topic to us, because it's one that's important to our both boards and to our community. And so we really do appreciate you being willing to spend the time with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Now, can you all see this somewhere? It's going to be really boring if you can't. It may not be better if you can, but it will be bad if you can't.
It's live. I know, but we should be able to see it up here.
It's going out over YouTube. Let's see what I can do.
Okay. Let's see. So kind of just at a high level before we're getting this in there, this is a very extraordinary time in a national housing market. And the hard part is trying to sort out what's national, what's local, what's statewide, what we can do. And there's a lot going on. So I'm going to try to sort some of that out so we can kind of see what we have control of and what we don't have control of. But the same conversations that are going on here are going on all over the place. And the weirdest thing is, I've been doing this a long time. The pandemic was a very strange thing. I mean, we all know what that was for, but it did really weird things for the housing market, and it changed the way we work as a society. Even in recessions, when we've had those, they usually start in one part of the country, or they start in one part of the economy and kind of work their way through. The pandemic was everybody on one day, we all said, nobody's come back to work. And we all started living the same life together. And in that time, the big thing has been remote work is a big piece. And it's hard to, why is remote work tied to all this thing? Well, what happened is everybody, you think about the first thing we all did, we all went home. Then you had to start Zoom calling into your office. Then you started looking around what was behind you and realizing that I don't have a good place to Zoom call into the office. So, and then they started giving you checks every once in a while. And if you had a job, that was extra money. And one of the things we do when we have extra money is, if you remember when you were 20 years old or whatever, the first thing you did when you got enough money was you got rid of a roommate. And when you also needed to have an office now, a lot of 2-bedroom apartments turned into 1-bedroom apartments. And that decision over and over again across all, millions of times at the same time had an effect. Then at the same time, you had people who, like particularly Silicon Valley was a big part of a place of it, but they were sent home and they went, wow, it's really expensive living in the Bay Area. We can go anywhere. I'm going somewhere nice. And so any place where people generally in these major metros went for vacations shot up far worse than we did even. And even here locally, the housing values in Bend and Newport and Lincoln City, those all were much higher than what we saw here. And at the same time, we had interest rates coming down. And so, when people start getting a little bit more cash and student loans were put on deferral, so we got a lot of wealth effect. And then interest rates come down, it's like, I got to buy a house. And if people already had a house, they went, I want to buy a second house. And so we ended up suddenly, everybody was consuming a lot more housing with the same number of people. And that is what has kind of got us to this point. That's about 60% of the total there, and about 93% of the total was just demand. Are we going to get this up, or should I?
It's up live on in
Yeah.
the universe.
So whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay,
If you want to
I can go.
keep going or
Okay.
pause and
Yep.
either way.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I can do, the first slides really kind of need to be slides, so I'll see if I can do some of the stuff at the back end, and when we get to it, we'll be okay. One of the things in Corvallis, understanding the history that we have in Corvallis, and to understand the history of Corvallis, for about half a century, being opposed to growth was a big part of our history. And the level, we're a very smart community. And when you're all focused on one issue and you put a bunch of smart people towards that issue, they tied everything up in knots. And the goal in the 1970s was, we don't want Corvallis to grow any larger. And we want to make sure that changes in the council, changes in the community, changes in laws won't affect our position. And so one of the things we have from that time period, just to give you an idea of what's going on in the 70s, there was a thing called, they were doing the comprehensive plan in 1976, and there was a thing called a citizen participation program where they got comments from everybody. The tenor of the comments, this is an actual quote, is, there is little or no support for an increased population growth. 62% of those responding in the questionnaire and at the meeting favored a reduction in the growth rate. In 1975, the city's planning department put out a brochure that is called A Citizen's Guide for Opposing a Zone Change. So that's where we were in the 1970s. This was coming out of, in the early 1970s was kind of the beginning of some of the environmental movement. We were kind of becoming more conscious of the global population thing, and everybody kind of felt that we need to just stop that here. And so that's kind of where we started. From that, things that we did, so just the multiple layers. 1971, they put 2-year terms and 9 wards in the city council. The reason for we're the only city in the state that has that. The reason was being, when I come to oppose your development project, I want all 9 of those council members to be nervous that they're going to have to come back before the voters shortly. And if you guys don't listen to me, I'm taking the whole group out. 9 wards, we had 9 wards before, we had 9 council members, which was odd, but we'd had that before, but we didn't have 9 wards, we had 3 wards before. 9 wards was intended to make everybody have such a small ward that you couldn't ignore a neighborhood and go, well, that's just the noisy people over there, I've still got my good voters over here. So that was put in place to kind of make everything speed up, and that was all about development. Turns out that having a short-term focus also affects some of our other decision-making over the last 50 years, but that's a different issue. Then in 1973, the state put in State Senate Bill 100, and that created statewide land use law, which no other state has and no other state did. That was, again, Governor Tom McCall at that time, and again, a lot of it was about those darn Californians need to go away. And so deep in our core at the state level is anti-growth. The city said, I don't trust the state to be anti-growth enough. And so in 1976, we became the first ones to come up with the idea of let's make annexation occur by voters. And so we did the voter-approved annexation, and that's in the charter. Oh, there we go. Cool. All right. And the rest of it, you're going to have to find out in a minute. Okay. So this drawing, what I'm showing here is just normally when we do things, there's certain things we can control and certain things we can't. The sort of national trends is the water. Normally we just are in a canoe going back and forth and we kind of know where we want to go. Right now, everybody's just holding on. And so we're paddling as hard as we can in some places, but understand the river is very, very strong right now. To get an idea, this is a chart that the blue line is kind of what income is. This is on a national chart. The orange line is how much people need to earn to purchase a house. And so these two lines are very closely tied together, but every once in a while they get off. And if you look on the left end, that's that pre-2009 Great Recession, and we had that housing bubble there. You look at the right end, and we're in the current situation. Look at the severity of the one on the left and the severity of the one on the right. Over time, these two lines will come together. They overshoot sometimes. One, like when you see when we came out of the Great Recession, we actually went down below. But in the end, you can't support housing values without people that can afford the housing. So we're in very much uncharted territory right now, but those two lines are coming. You feel one of them right now because I'm sure there's lots of, if you're like the city, lots of people that are saying, I can't afford housing. I would like to move that blue line. And then there's also this orange line. At the local level, Corvallis, we have a similar looking line. We actually didn't have too bad of an impact in the Great Recession. Because we're a college town, everybody came back to go to school. We were insulated. We're not insulated anymore. But what you can see in the blue line is our median single-family house price. That line has stopped going up, and that's kind of a key piece there. You'll also see in the orange line at the bottom that income piece is now rising up. So that line that's in the gray, that the gray and the blue are the two trying to come together, you can see they are starting to work their way back. When they come down can sometimes be dramatic. But it's definitely what we would call as a housing bubble at that point. Another thing we track is to see if we're providing enough housing is, are people living in Corvallis or are they commuting in? And so back in about 2000, we were a fairly balanced community where we had about the same number of people commuting in and commuting out and living and working in the city. It was kind of very balanced. You can see that those bottom two lines, which is people commuting out or people living and working in Corvallis, with all the housing that's been built since 2000, it's basically flat. In fact, we now have more people living in Corvallis and moving out and going out, which is another piece of our puzzle here in a minute. But the one I want you to look at is on the top. Almost all of our employment growth over the last 25 years has been on the backs of in commuting. And so you'll see that in the last little bit here, we finally are starting to bend that curve. Now, a large part of that is OSU deciding that you can remote work and people deciding, I'm going out, I think, but we have also, you're seeing some of our housing hit in there. The interesting part is the live and work in Corvallis. That's kind of that probably OSU effect popping in there. It's not nearly as dramatic as what's come down. So we do think there's some definite real piece in there. But the out commuting going up is an odd piece there. And when what we think is going on qualitatively with some of what we hear about who's buying houses and things is that we have become a place that people that are remote working to other places are coming into. And so, there's disadvantages of being nice sometimes. A lot of people want to know what's the university's impact on this thing. If you were around in the teens when the university was rising, you can see that about 2012 there was a bump in the student enrollment. This is our affordability cost burden. You'll see that right around that same time period, we were on sort of a straight line of about 2,500 severely cost burdened households, and then we've been kind of a straight line at that 4,200, 4,500. So that was a fundamental shift there that occurred, and we really haven't been able to catch up to that. These are the folks who are severely cost burdened. This is, not just it's hard, this is it's really, really hard. And so we're dealing with 4,500 people in the community in that position. Now, the good news, I have one more piece. No good news yet. This is how we track the affordability by bedroom type. And what's interesting here, you do see that it starts to go up in 2016. Part of that is because at that point we started actually bringing new apartments online. So new apartments tend to come in at the upper end of the rent range. And so that's actually good news in there. But what's the bad news is on the top is the income piece. And that income piece has been flat the whole way down. And it actually dipped down below the 4-bedroom apartment rent, which isn't normal. So we do see that slowly coming back up. But again, it's not anywhere near where it was a decade ago. The good news, though, last December, OSU announced that it's going to add 2,500 on-campus beds as quickly as possible. To give you an idea of what that is, that's probably about 700 houses or apartments, and it's like creating them out of nothing because you all know that students are packed everywhere they can be. Every time we've put more student housing on, when I first got here, when a student housing project came in or any project came in, we were still in the anti-growth mode, and people are like, okay, Paul, I understand we need to have an apartment building, but is this the last one? Or is do we need, 100 more apartments? When are we done? And it's like, that's not how it works. So now we are looking at, this kind, and when these units have come on, like the Retreat or the Domain, we have seen instantly a bump in people moving out of single-family rentals because that's not where students want to be. We've seen people coming in closer. We see vacancy rates go up, and then they drop about 6 months later because everybody that's outside of Corvallis that's trying to get in can get in. But neighborhoods will report that neighborhoods that used to be kind of overrun by student housing are now turning into more family housing. So there is that movement. So this is very exciting, and it's something that can happen fast. Looking at values, Corvallis here is the red at the top, so you can see that, and the green at the bottom is the United States. So you can see that across the valley here, we've actually been tracking pretty closely with the nation. Corvallis is doing that little dip up there at the top. Ironically, I was surprised to see Junction City up where it was, but it shot up higher than Albany. When I was talking about that remote work value, I kind of looked at places where I might think about remote working from. You can see what happened in Bend at the same time, which is the top line there. Corvallis is that red line still. Lincoln City almost passed Corvallis in the, Lincoln City was about half of ours and then jumped up to being almost as high as we were over just this pandemic from people moving out. Now you can see people are maybe thinking twice about Lincoln City, and it's starting to come back down first. There's our friends at the Barometer actually turned me onto this new one. As we're talking about workforce housing, there's a construction group that actually takes up the data apart and looks at it from a construction worker perspective, but it kind of is a proxy for workforce housing. And they actually do all the metros in the entire country. And so I grabbed all the ones from Oregon, and then just for fun, I put the number one and the bottom one on there so you can see what nationally where we fit. So we are doing better than San Jose. You can see that in 2024, Corvallis all of a sudden jumped up to being the second least affordable place for construction workers to be behind Bend. What's interesting about that when you dive into it is, yes, our house value went up from 528 to 541, and the other ones are starting to drop between that time period. So we are starting to see some of that air coming out of the balloon. But the interesting part that really drove us up was actually the wage piece. Our wage went up from 28.22 to 28.53. Our friends in Albany, it went from 22.96 to 27.46. And you'll see all up and down, everybody else had $3, $4. I don't know what was happening in our construction companies locally, but so we have to always look at those two pieces. The other thing is that first column is the number of hours that you'd have to work to own a home. And so if it's over 40, it means you need to be a 2-income family. If it's over 80, you got a problem. And actually, I would say over 70, because we all know that if you have a 2-income family, you are then in the daycare game, and that reduces one of those pieces considerably. So when we get up to about, over 70, we start feeling a little uncomfortable. If you live in San Jose, you need to have a lot of friends. Barriers. So again, the 1970s, not all peace and love in Corvallis. And so that's what I was describing to you. It actually had a cartoon and everything. And there's the quote there, so that's true. So in here, we were going down here. We changed the charter to make it easier to appeal. Then at the state, they started to go, hey, wait, no one's going to build anything. So we at least need to build the needed housing. So we'll separate housing between needed and not needed. So if any of you live in not needed housing, let me know. And then there was still anger about HP. And so they put in, we're one of the few cities that has a requirement to go to the voters for urban renewal, which is one of the tools you can use to do things. Ballot measure 5 and 50 came in. You know all about those too. They never bothered to give us a different revenue source, so it limits what things we can do. Then all of a sudden the state went, this is really getting a little bit out of control. So, and particularly Corvallis, you're getting out of control. So we used to require what's called a plan development, and that's where basically in order to get approval of a development, you have to go to a public hearing. People get to say yes and no, and whether you're going to get your development or not depends on that vote. And we kind of viewed that as being a community engagement kind of fun thing to do, but it's taking away all the value, all the property values that anybody has. We used to require it. So there were certain things you couldn't get without going through that process. You didn't have another door. And the state said, you can't do that. You have to at least give somebody an option. They can opt to go into this other thing, but you have to give them an option. So we had to take care of those in the 2000s. Then the state ended voter-approved annexation. Fun fact, my very first council meeting, they brought me forward to introduce me, and they said, City Manager Shepherd said, you're not saying anything. There's something on the agenda you don't want to know anything about. Council at that moment voted to sue the state to preserve voter-approved annexation. So we've come a long way. 2017 came in, then all housing became needed housing. Some things about ADUs. We were already well ahead of this on ADUs. The big moment in Corvallis, besides the voter-approved annexation, was the Kings Boulevard case. That was a case where the city council went against the staff recommendation and chose to deny extension of Kings Boulevard. It happened before I was here too, but I got all the court case part. And it really had no merit. And it was in a corridor that was already shown on the plans and everything else. And so we got spanked. And from that, we got an enforcement order that basically said all this shenanigan stuff needs to stop. And then the state saw how that worked with us and said, this is really cool. Let's put it in legislation and do that to everybody else. So that's what's been going on for a few years here. So middle housing came forward in 2019. We were already a bit ahead on that, but we did make some changes in some areas. Climate-friendly rules have changed things to make things taller. We were ahead of the game on that one. Climate-friendly, actually, we were more climate-friendly than where they are. And now we're in a brave new world where they've created a new body. So in the original housing, there was a Land Use Board of Appeals, which was intended so that people that were opposed to housing had have an easier way to go stop projects than going to court. And so that was created there. And it's changed now. Now that the state is pro-housing, they kind of use some of these same tools the other direction, but that one is not enough. So they created a new body that only developers can appeal to. We haven't seen it yet, to force cities to approve projects. So it's kind of a funny little thing there. And if they appeal there before the neighborhood does, it has to go there and the other can't. So we're in a strange new world. We've reduced the land development code by over 300 pages. We completed the middle housing land development code amendment. We've completed our mixed use districts. Downtown, fun fact, we can get up to 123 feet now. We're far beyond what the state requires. We've created the coordinated office for homeless response with Benton County. We've got new annexation standards, and so we've gone from being the ones that were doing the vote to now being the first one to create what's called a minor annexation, which is a streamlined process that just goes straight to council. We've already approved, I think, 3 of these this summer. I think there's 7 total annexations in front of us right now. To give you an idea, before this, an annexation came about once every 5 years, and it usually took about 18 months to get through the process. Now they're coming and going like that. We eliminated off-street parking requirements everywhere in the city. We had some of the most stringent parking requirements, again, grassroots thing in about the 2014 time period. For a 5-bedroom apartment, you had to have 4.5 parking spaces. That's why the Domain looks the way it does and why the old GT building looks the way it does. This one you won't know what this is, so we'll just, it's inside baseball, but it was important. And then we used to have a thing that talks about five unrelated people is all you could do in a unit. The state banned that. That was a fun new thing that the state learned was, since every city has to follow state law, we're tired of waiting to give them time to adopt things. We'll just approve it. So they did that and said it's effective immediately. Well, we had whole bits of the code that are in there, and actually the state building code is also talks about family occupancy, so no one knew what to do. That was a fun time. So now we have no parking requirements, new mixed use. We've got a big toolbox, inclusive zones. We were one of the first ones to say that manufactured homes are equal status. Cottage clusters, we have one of the most unlimited cottage cluster in the state. We now allow RS12 and RS20 to go into mixed-use zones automatically, or almost automatically. Zoning bonuses for affordable housing. We're the only city, I think, right now that allows residential plan developments to be removed by right. The council has to physically do it, but they're not allowed to vote no. That was one of the things that came out of the enforcement order. Yeah, it was fun. Simplified annexations, no more vote, high density housing. That high density housing is the story really about our affordable housing boom right now. When I got here again, we just gone through a BLI. They said we only needed 12 acres of high density housing for the next 20 years. I said, there's no way that is true. And, you know, I've worked in college towns before and everything else, but the problem was 20 years ago when they had the last BLI, it also said you didn't have any land for high density residential. And it turns out that if you go for 20 years without having any land, you don't have any demand. So we got that taken care of. We put in a lot of financial tools in. Is this yellow light my real yellow light, or is it yellow light before we started fixing things? Okay. Okay. So I'll try to wrap up. So here's our annexation. You can see back here the effect of those 1970s things. We stopped annexing property, and it dropped off like a rock. That affects us a lot with Albany. So when you look at Corvallis, the amount of vacant land we have that would be for single family is about 345 acres. We've got about a third or so of what Albany does available. Now, over the last 10 years, we produced half as many units. So on a per acre basis, we're doing well. But you just can't, you know, from a cost perspective, so the single family is the hardest one for us to fix right now because we just have to annex more property. On the multifamily, we're actually pretty comparable, and we actually outperformed Albany over the last 10 years. And that will be higher because the first half of that 10-year period, we were still fighting everything. So most of that happened in the last half. Other good news, $125 million of new affordable housing going up. I wanted to show you the bedroom count because those 2 and 3 bedrooms are going to be bringing kiddos. And we've also got 47 units of PSH, which is going to be really, really helpful. The other thing that's doing is it's allowing, with our county friends, they've got a flexible housing pool that they've not had before. And they're having places to put them. And our shelters are emptying because we have places to put it. We have, generally on any given night right now, we have over 50 shelter beds throughout all of the system. Which is not where we were 2 years ago, but people are getting out. The good news is the county's only been doing this flexible housing subsidy for about a quarter, and so far 40% of those units have been McKinney-Vento, so that's cool. We just got another funding about 2 weeks ago for another 50 units coming up on Spruce, so we've got another affordable housing project coming. Corvallis decided to lean in. We try to put money out, and our service providers are just kind of tapped out on capacity right now. They've got to hire people and absorb stuff. So we decided we'd go out and buy our own building. And so we bought an apartment building to allow Benton County to do services out of. So that'll be for transitional housing. We have to do a rehab on it first. Talked about the flexible subsidy pool and our annexation reform. And so what's coming in the future, the market still needs to catch up on some of these things. This doesn't happen overnight. We did the downtown reforms about 2 years ago, I think. We are getting people in from Seattle, from Portland. They're buying up property. You're hearing a lot about how downtown is dying. Part of why downtown is dying is that people are buying these properties, accumulating the properties, ceasing the leases so they can redevelop them. So there's one that's been announced already that's about 8 stories. It's got a hotel and about 85 or 90 apartments in it. There's about 3 others out there that are still at the confidential phase stuff, but you're going to start seeing 6, 7, 8-story buildings downtown. We're still completing some code stuff that we're down. We ordered stuff so that the most substantive would come first. So the impact is more our piece, an annoyance, more than it's going to be a large change in the curve. Our existing land use pattern, one of the things they did in the 70s was with a voter-approved annexation, they then said, let's try to go out and subdivide all those properties that are out in the county, because then even if they change their minds later, it will be so difficult and expensive that they'll never be able to move out there. So, the Highland Dell development up at the, that development came to the city first as 400 units of housing. The council said, no, that's crazy. Then it came back and the next year is 200 units of housing. And the council said, well, I guess we can't turn this down. I guess we'll put it out to the voters. Voters said no. I think it's 16 mansions. That was viewed at the time, folks that are around then said that there were people cheering when that occurred because they said, this is the cork that will bottle Corvallis up forever, no matter what they ever change. Now that we have a problem, what it means is, yes, it is going to be more difficult and it's going to be more expensive. Thank you so much. There are now, the state's done a really good job of telling locals what to do. There are some things the state could do too, and it's becoming more and more things that they want to avoid that are politically difficult. Condominiums, as we move everybody into higher and higher size, we're also right now moving everybody away from home ownership, because there is no such thing as a condominium being built in Oregon, because there's a liability issue there. The state knows it. There's some politics around that they don't want to touch it. We have same thing with affordable housing. There are certain affordable housing that's short, gets to not use BOLI wages, and anything that's a little bit taller or anything that's mixed use or any of those other things has to. Not saying there's anything bad about BOLI wages. I'm just saying that the funding and the requirement should be in alignment. And then more and more the state is realizing that it's not going to be able to manage its support for environmental and its support for housing. Those two worlds are starting to cross over each other. We've got, I think, about 600 apartments that have been tied up in wetlands for 4 years, maybe. And there's other things. So anyway, that is my deal.
That's a lot of information for us to take in. And I know we had the packet before, but also more things. And we can probably extend by 5 minutes, but I don't want to go much more past that because we have the foundation with us. There's a couple words that you use that not all community members may know what they mean, like annexation and cottage cluster, were the two that stood out. Can you just really fast say what that means?
Annexation is adding a piece of ground to the city, so then it can have sewer and water and be built at a higher density. And cottage cluster is a type of development that is for smaller homes that are all around a little courtyard. We have a few of them in town from 50 years ago, and it's something that you're going to see a lot more of, I think.
Awesome, thank you. That's helpful. That way they can know. BLI, thank you. I didn't write them all down.
Yeah. Buildable lands inventory, that's where every once in a while the city has to figure out how much housing and how much land they need.
Nice, okay. We can probably ask a couple questions. People have some, okay, go ahead, Sammy.
Thank you, Paul. Very insightful and really important context to see the past, the present, and potentially the future. I want to ask you the question around what we see is a declining enrollment in student population after Corvallis witnessed a steady growth all the way until 2017. We have been witnessing a decline in student population where right now, this year, the enrollment is less than what it used to be back at least in 1981, if not before. So the question for you, if the drawing board is very flexible and there's no constraints, what tools do you see are working and what tools do you see are necessary of consideration so we can turn the curve around?
Yeah.
And maybe I want to tack another sub-question there. Are we turning around, or is there work to be done so we can do that?
The fastest way to turn around is going to be with apartments, whether they're for students or other folks. Getting people out of single-family rentals that they don't want to be in is going to be the fastest way to create. I can't create 600 single-family homes. I can create an apartment building that will free up 600 homes. And that's what we've been seeing, and that's why we've been kind of focusing on that. The university is going to be a big piece of it. I think these new small annexations of 2 and 3 acre, 1 acre parcels are going to be there. A lot of them are down 53rd, 49th, that kind of area. They're going to be able to be really turned around quickly to be townhomes, possibly cottage clusters, smaller housing. You're going to see there's a lot of people looking to do that right now. So that's going to go. And in the downtown, we're probably going to add 300-400 units of apartments in the next 3 years, I would guess. I do also want to point out on that, there was a chart at the end. Birth rate is declining, and you know that too. I mean, that's a big issue there.
Yeah. Other questions from the board or student reps? I have a question, more that I actually had other questions, but I can ask those later. But just like one thing I did notice, like when you're talking about like the OSU encouraging remote, they don't anymore, but the people aren't moving back, so they're just commuting. And so I think that's really fascinating too, like instead of coming back, that people are still like set where they're at. You had said something about that you're seeing more housing matches with shelters having more beds now. Is some of that due to some of the intake requirements around drug testing, do you think, or do you think it's all placement?
Yeah, no, we're seeing vacancy across the board. It's in the youth, it's in the low barrier shelters, and it's in the high barrier shelters. So that's good. I mean, there's still people out there that are unsheltered, and there's still a need, and there aren't enough vacant beds for everybody who's out. But we're at least at, we have various milestones. One of the milestones we're at right now is that anybody who who wants a shelter bed can get one. 3 years ago, we couldn't say that.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? Then people can reach out to you if they have more questions. Again, that was a lot to take in. And we also have a lot of guests tonight, so they may have questions as well that they aren't able to ask at this time. So thank you, Paul, for your time.
Thanks again, Paul, and for your flexibility in navigating the screen. You're a pro.
Okay, so the next part of our agenda is our work session with the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. And so I just want to say welcome to you all. We're happy to have you. And for folk who are wondering why we had so many people sitting around a table with us, that is why. And Ryan, did you have anything to kick us off with too?
Well, and just thank you for being here early. I think that the conversation and the information that was shared is as important to you as it is to our board. So thanks for being here for that as we move into the next component of talking about our roles and our ability to make change, and some important information that we're all going to have an opportunity to hear. And then after that, we'll have an opportunity for some discussion. So looking forward to that.
And we're going to start with introductions. Yes, maybe we can start with Therese and just go around that way.
I'm Therese Jones, and I am a school board member and currently serving as co-vice chair.
My name is Laura. I am the school board rep from Crescent Valley High School.
Judah Largent, he, him pronouns. I'm a school board member.
Hi, everyone. Melissa Harder. I'm the assistant superintendent here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jihan. I'm a trustee on the Corvallis Public School Foundation and serving as secretary this year.
Hi, I'm Julie Penry. I'm new to the Corvallis Public School Foundation board this year.
I'm Nina Ehrlich-Williams, she, her pronouns, and I'm on the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. Nice to see you all.
Hi, I'm Angela Hibbard. I'm the executive director of the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation.
Mindy Hamlin, foundation trustee.
Monty Smith, new member of the foundation.
I'm Rick Wallace. I'm on the board of trustees for the foundation. I'm Erica Syrup, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the foundation.
Mark Goheen. I'm on the board also.
Hi, I'm Alicia Harder. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also a member of the Corvallis Public School Foundation Board.
Sami Abdrabbo, school board member, he, him, his.
My name is Harvick Messler. I'm a student representative for College Hill High School.
Hi, I'm Chris Hawkins. I'm on the school board, and I use she, her pronouns.
Eileen Lewis, and I'm the other student representative for College Hill High School.
I'm Shauna Tomini. I use she, her pronouns, and along with Therese, serve as co-vice chair for the Corvallis School Board.
And I'm Lou. I'm the chair of the school board, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Noss. I'm the superintendent of the school board, superintendent of the school district. There was rhythm to it.
Yeah.
There was rhythm. And I use he, him pronouns.
Cool. Well, thanks you all for the introductions. I know some of us know each other, but maybe not everyone. And also to introduce yourselves to the community who watches the meetings too online with us. The first part of the meeting is the OSBA Legislative Action Report slide presentation, and we have Vince Adams joining us. Thank you, Vince. And if you want to introduce yourself, of course, too.
Well, Chair White Bear, Superintendent Noss, Corvallis School Board, Corvallis Public Schools Foundation Board, it is a delight to be with you. My name is Vince Adams. I'm a board development specialist with the Oregon School Boards Association, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm a school board trainer, and I get to travel all over Oregon and work with school boards. And I used to be on the school board, so it's really kind of surreal and strange to be with you here tonight and see myself on that screen. And so I have a confession to make. You know, and I admit, as a rule, I don't apologize when I speak publicly, but I'm going to do that tonight. So you just heard from an expert. Paul is an expert at what he does. But unfortunately, the experts on legislative outreach for OSBA couldn't be with us tonight. So you get the second string quarterback. So I will do my very best. I've done some legislative outreach in my tenure when I was on the Corvallis School Board. So I have been to Salem, I've made mistakes, and I'm here to share whatever wisdom I gleaned from that. So, Kim, well, do we have slides yet? Yes. They're coming. Hey, there. These are not my slides. These are my colleagues' slides. And so I will do my very best working through these. So I'm really going to focus not on the what, because the what we need to do in this legislative cycle really needs to be identified by all y'all, not by me. I'm really going to focus on how. How do we go about doing that? How do we go about engaging our legislators? So I'm going to move pretty quickly through the first part of the slides, and I'll slow down once we get to the how part. So let's see. Hey, the remote works. So 2025. So we are, I don't think I need to explain to anybody in the room that we are in a resource-constrained environment. It is challenging to do education, and it's getting increasingly so. And that's because we're undergoing system transformation. If we rewind back to when I graduated from high school in 1987 in Reedsport here in Oregon, a 70% graduation rate was acceptable. Everybody was happy. Principals happy, superintendents happy, school boards happy. That's because we had an economy where kids that didn't graduate, they could go find a job. Today, if a kid doesn't graduate from high school, they will struggle to participate in the 21st century economy. The expectations on K-12 education are shifting right under our feet. And so if you're feeling tension, if you think that education is hard, school board, if you're having to partner with your public schools foundation just to make ends meet, that's because the game has really changed. This is not our grandparents' education system anymore. So that really underlays, where we're going here in this 2025 legislative session. So at Oregon School Boards Association, we have 3 primary goals that we're going to be aiming at. Front and center is going to be funding. Next is going to be addressing chronic absenteeism, and then the last piece is accountability. Now, I'm going to call a mulligan. I have the president of Oregon School Boards Association in the room, and he's been on the Legislative Roadshow for the last, 3 weeks now, sharing these priorities with school boards. So, Sammy, can you take like 5 minutes and discuss these 3 priorities?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vince. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Sammy Alav-Draboso. I want to say, Vince, you're doing phenomenal work. Wherever you go around the state, people say, there's this trainer from Corvallis. Like Vince Adams, like, yes. And this is what he helped us to do. And OSBA is really doing the hard work, partnering with local school boards and communities across Oregon. So as we speak right now, we have a team in Pendleton, another team in Astoria, sharing what you're listening to right here, but also uplifting your experience and your perspective. So before I go to those 3 priorities, I'm going to ask for a popcorn reporting from everybody, the students, board members, staff, and foundation. I want to hear at least 3 or 4 responses to this question. Tell me about something that's going well in our education community, in our schools, in our school districts. What's going well? Feel free to raise your hand and unmute.
Community.
Yes. Community. Yes, Dina.
I think students feel seen, or feeling maybe more seen, as we heard from our introductory report.
Students feel seen. What else?
Representation and equality for all individuals from all backgrounds and ethnicities.
Wonderful. More representation.
I like to see that students' diverse goals for their futures are being more supported, and it's not a single track for how students can define their success.
We're seeing students, each student, for who they are and who they want to be. Let's hear one more.
We've expanded support for our students in some really critical needs ways, like expanding mental health, expanding free meals, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Let me tell you why I started with this. This is what we're starting with in every conversation with Legislative Roadshow, conversations with board members. And I'm reminded why this is important. Back in 2018, I remember Ryan reminding me when I was pointing fingers, this is not working, this is not working, this is not working. We need to ask for the bond and tell people about all the things that are not working. And Ryan reminded me, Sami, do you want to work with winners or people who only highlights what's not working? I was like, yes, I want to work with winners. So share about what's working well and then highlights what we need to invest in so we can move forward. So this is really the important why when we talk with legislators, when we talk with the community, we need to uplift the stories that we started with right now so we can take the next step. Now, next step, let me tell you about what OSBA does. They track every piece of legislation every year. Every 2 years, you have long session and short session. In long sessions, including 2025, you'll have flood of legislation, sometimes about 500 pieces of legislation that touches on education. This year, we heard about potentially one legislature having 42 bills. If you multiply that by 90 legislatures, that will be a lot. So here's the challenge and the opportunity. For OSBA to really advocate on your behalf and support you, make sure the kids receive the support they deserve, we need to categorize any type of legislation or a subject to 2 subjects. One that any and each one of us can speak to. Anyone of us can say, this is why this is important. Let me tell you an important story about it, and you can advocate for it. And there is other aspects where it may take like a 24 hours turnaround from the bill being proposed to finding someone who really is passionate about very niche subject, reaching out to that person and say, I need your help on this. So as we talk about the 3 priorities, just remember there's a lots of things that we need help with, and we may reach out to you individually if you have an interest about specific subjects. And there's a barcode that's where you might be able to highlight toward the end of the session where you can sign up to advocate about a specific subject for the advocacy survey. But before we go there, let's talk about those 3 issues that OSBA identified that we believe all of us here can share a story that will impact our students. Number 1 is funding. So for funding, students have been receiving public education support from the state predominantly, local monies and federal monies as well, but the state is the main driver. Every 2 years, we start the conversation with huge discrepancy between school districts and education community saying this is what it takes to keep the lights open, to keep the student-teacher ratio the same, and give them salaries that are commensurate with the demand of the job. That's what we call CSL, or current service level. Every 2 years, we have a huge gap, and that gap led to lots of confusion. So last year, the legislature passed what they called historic funding, the most funding ever. Now, if you see the dollars, that's the most funding ever. But if you see inflation and bills for the heat and the teacher salaries and everything else, actually that was a cut budget. And that's what we saw when we had those strikes in Portland and almost a strike in Salem-Kaiser. The governor looked really hard into what can we do about this. So we achieved a really huge milestone right now that the governor is willing to engage in a conversation where we start the conversation with saying, this is the current service level. We're going to agree at least on how we start that conversation about accuracy. What does it really take to keep doing what we're doing, the good things that we're doing? And that's what I want to say is monumental milestone. But just like any budget, you're going to have so many conflicting objectives. Transportation, housing, homelessness, drug addiction, and education, all are important. But we need to make sure we highlight why the current service level, the accuracy calculation, is so important. Because every 2 years or every year, Ryan will have to really think hard about what we have to cut if we are getting money less and less every 2 years. So this is going to be really important help. Now let me ask you this. Can you talk about that? Absolutely. We're talking about the programs that we're already doing. We're talking about the importance of the work that we do and why we need to keep doing it. And that's where the conversation around funding is going to be really important. Another thing about funding that is important to highlight is summer school. Thanks for the foundation. Summer school here became something that we can plan for long term. Students have access to it. The legislature last year had a really great proposal of $30 million. Unfortunately, it was short of the full funding of summer school. So we had to pick and choose ODE had to pick and choose which district received those funds from the states. Corvallis, unfortunately, did not get that. However, Corvallis offered it thanks to the investments from the foundation. And thanks to the investments from the foundation and the results that we saw from the districts about summer school, the legislature now have better awareness that summer school actually works. Summer school provides you with results. And I'm not saying something that's intuitive. Actually, you really need to share those stories, why summer school matter and how it make an impact. So those stories are going to be very important when we go to the next year and we say we need to invest in summer school. Students should receive it no matter their zip code is. The second subject is chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism in the last few years have doubled. I'm not going to talk about the numbers. I want you to think about this. What does it mean when the number of students double of those we can't see? They can't hear the hello from the office. They can't see those smiles. They can't receive that question, what's going on? What kind of help do you need? What's going on with those bruises? all of these touches that we have with our students, or those benefits are going to be nowhere if the students are not in the classroom. And that impact is huge. Now, a great opportunity that we have this coming year, there's a task force on chronic absenteeism. Representative Wawin from David Douglas, who also is a school board member and a student, former student who navigated absenteeism because she had to help out her parents. They're refugees who were tending to the shop, and she needed to work with them at the shop, and she understands it. And in her professional life, she works with an ESD where they work on helping students show up into schools and finding out how we can really provide different tiers of support so students can show up. All of those stories that we do here in Corvallis and we do across Oregon are going to be so important so the legislature can invest in making sure students are cared for, and where they're not at the classroom or in the school, we have the tools to make sure to help them to come here. Now, the last one is accountability. And I know my time is probably up, so I'm going to ask you, without sharing, but think about how do you define accountability, or what accountability looks like to you? Here's some things I heard. Division 22, lots of reports. Some people say being punished when I don't deliver results, not getting the resources I need when I really need it. Is that the proper definition, or is it not? That's the question that we're navigating with the legislature and with the governor's office right now. OSBA have a task force. We are represented by Emily Nishik and Efraim Zumedios, who are both from OSBA Legislative and the CEO of the organization, really making sure that we highlight accountability goes both ways. We need to report how we're doing, but also when we don't get the result, the investments, we can't deliver on the results. When we don't get what the students really need, what does that mean? And when the students don't get the support, or the support is not working for them, how can we pivot and put more resources where they're needed most so we can move the needle toward outcome? So really understanding accountability and highlighting that in this environment and climate where public education is under attack, and when we are putting lots of burden on administrators to provide hundreds of pages every year with reports, are we doing enough? And what does it mean to actually share the information that actually moves the needle? And that's these three things we believe that you can advocate for by highlighting why it matters, what's working well in that regard, and why we need the investments to support maintaining that funds at least for accuracy, what we need to do. And hopefully we can reach the quality education model, which is what the adequacy for what students need. Make sure students can show up into the classroom so they receive the help and learning they deserve, and have a system of accountability that actually works, helps school districts do better, but also ensures that the legislature invests in what the students deserve.
Thank you, Sammy, so much for, well, no, he really touched on the why. What are we going to do? What do we need to do? And why are we doing it? So that's perfect. So let's pivot to how are we going to get it done? So just show of hands, how many of you have talked to a legislator, and I'm not talking about casually, but actually talked to them about something about policy? And it has to be your legislator, someone in your district. One, there's a few over here. Yeah, a couple. How many of you have actually gone to the Capitol and advocated, either in meeting a legislator or testifying? Great. So still a few. Good, good, good. So this is, this is the nuts and bolts of it, is connecting with our legislators. Can I have my slides back? Oh, thank you. Because if I don't have my slides, then I'll go off I'll go all over the place. We don't want that. Okay, so we're going into the long session. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of this, but this is the marathon. So we're in an odd numbered year. This is the marathon. In even number years, we have the sprint. And so, of course, we're setting budget this year. It's 6 months long, and we're starting in January. So we've got a few months to get skilled up and get ready to get this work done. But you will need to start doing this work now, tomorrow. I'm going to give you action items to do tomorrow. Okay? Ready? Let's keep going. So I think Sammy talked about the why. Why do we need to engage? I think the big thing that that I want to leave you with is that even before the recent change in the lineup in our legislators, they didn't fully understand what was going on with K-12 education. Now we have a new crop of freshman legislators, and they really have no idea what we're working through. So your advocacy is critically important. Let's see, I'm just scanning the slide really quickly. Do you see that? Fall and winter months are about building relationships. We're going to talk about that more here in just a little bit. Okay, moving forward. You can go onto our website. So legislative advocacy is one of the big components of what Oregon School Boards Association does. We're one of the 3 associations that represent local government entities in Oregon. So we have the Association of Oregon Counties, League of Oregon Cities, and Oregon School Boards Association. All 3 of those entities do legislative outreach representing for our respective organizations that we work with. So we have lobbyists that work for us. They have web presence and lots of information to support you. I'm not going to go into detail on how to find your legislator. If you want to learn how to do that, you can either reach out to our legislative staff or, it's really, you can just go online and figure it out. They're not hard to find if you actually look for them. But I do want to touch on a few things. There is a website where you can click on there, see your district. That's not our district. I do want to talk briefly about OLIS. This is the portal where we can track legislation. Following our legislative team it's pretty daunting. They're usually juggling 300, 500 pieces of legislation at any given time. You will probably have interest in a few of those, maybe 20, 25 of them, but that's a lot to keep track of. OLIS is a great place for accessing information about that legislation, and you can also get updates, email updates. I think there's actually a slide for that. Yeah, so there's a way that you can get e-updates, emails right into your inbox to get information in real time about where these pieces of legislation, how they're moving through the process. I want to keep moving. I don't know what this slide is for. I cut it earlier, but that's okay. This is the good stuff. Okay, so we said that fall and winter is relationship time, and this is the work that you're going to start tomorrow. So you're going to pick up the phone, you're going to write an email. If you're really good, you'll use text message. If you're really, really good, you'll message one of our legislators via like Messenger and Facebook or something like that, if you're that tight with them. But do your research, read their bios, get to know who these people are. Now, we here in Benton County, we live pretty close to our legislators. We know them fairly well. So I think we all know Sarah Gelson-Bluen is our state senator, and then we have our very own Sarah Finger McDonald will be our representative in the legislature. So we know her really well because she used to be on our school board. And also Sarah Gelson-Bluen was formerly on the school board. So that is a real big advantage for us. They already get it. They understand. So when you go to reach out to them, they're gonna speak the same language that you do. Yeah, definitely attend any legislative coffees that they offer, any events that they offer. Please show up. They're campaigning right now in earnest. You might have already shown up at one of their events. Take time to introduce yourself and get to know them, and then try and get some one-on-one time with them. Town halls, of course. Bring your legislator to work day. So, right now would be a good time. Sarah, we have the Sarahs. We have both Sarahs. I was saying Sarah Finger McDonald already has a pretty intimate understanding of the school district and its challenges. but I mean, Sarah Gelser-Bluen it would be good for her to sit and maybe meet with some of you and show up in a meeting. That would be good. This next one is don't put off communicating with staff. And this is important, and it's a bit subtle, because once the legislative session gets going, legislators are going fast. They're very busy. They have lots of meetings. And so their staff become gatekeepers. So you want to get to know who these people are, and you want them to know who you are. And you want them to have a positive reaction. Kind of like, you know, those customer service reps that we work with. You want to smile when you're talking to them because you want them to help you. If you bring them chocolate, you get bonus points. So yeah, definitely take time to get connected with their staff because they're going to help you connect with that legislator. Now, I did mention that, you know, working with our two Sarahs, but they're not the only ones that influence on education in Oregon. There's both House and Senate education committees, and they're populated with a wide variety of folks from all over Oregon. So you may be meeting with folks that are out of district. Again, all these rules apply. Read their bio, get to know who they are, get to know their staff. Okay? Yeah, and go to the district. I mean, if you're working with someone in Portland or Eastern Oregon, if you can, spare some time, go meet them on their home turf. Okay. This is important. And when Adrienne Anderson, my colleague who's on the legislative team, gave this webinar, I was just really impressed with this content. And so I'm really excited to share it with you. So the first part of this is gathering information, kind of what Sammy was already starting to do. And you already have a ton of information. You probably just don't realize it. You have annual reports. I'm looking at foundation folks. You've been doing a lot of amazing work. You have lots of information. School board, you've been tracking the district all year and into last year. You have data. You have stories. You have lots of information. When I say stories, you have student stories, examples. So communicate with each other. Try to remember what those things are. What are those key things that fit within those three areas? Remember, funding, those accountability, unfunded mandates, and absenteeism. So what are those stories that revolve around that or illustrate those? Engage with staff. Do what you're doing right now. Familiarize yourself with needs. I think this group of people in this room do this really, really well. When I go elsewhere in Oregon, it's not always the case. People are not as engaged. And then if you don't feel comfortable, because not everybody is comfortable doing legislative outreach, it is a little intimidating. I know when I did it at first, I was terrified. You know, because Dan Rayfield, he was our rep then. He's a smart guy. He's quick, and I was like, he was terrifying to me the first time. So, and then I helped him, you know, tote his band in the parade on my trailer, and you know, it's all good now. But I mean, starting out, it was really scary. So if you don't feel comfortable going to Salem, identify those people that are going to go and tell your stories, and support them in doing the work. Okay. Oh, hey, this is an OSBA slide. They're telling your story. So, yeah, hats off to you for making summer school happen for our kids. We're sharing that out across the state. So, yeah, and this is an amazing story. Yeah, you reached out to 110 kids in our district. Yeah, I'm just looking, only 22% of high poverty districts receive part of that $30 million. So it's just, there were so many districts that were left behind that couldn't engage with that. And because you guys made the investment, you were able to have that impact. And so what a tremendous story that you can share with the legislator. They need to hear this message. So let's see, I don't want to go get into the details of these. Again, the ideas here are, you know, This one, Lake Ridge has one counselor for every 400. We know that the national standard is 250. You know, can you imagine being a counselor and having to have to manage 250 is too much. But they're dealing with 400, and they take it down. Their students are faced with the mental health challenges. Then, you know, when schools have more counselors, it allows them to proactively reach out to students and support them. The punchline here is that legislature needs to fund that work. Remember, the expectations on the system have changed. We're doing different work than we did back in 1987. There were no mental health counselors in high school then, but we definitely need them today. So, this isn't the amazing, really good slide. We're getting almost there. Yeah, so identify, get grounded in who you are, you know, so, and the work that you do. I mean, so we have two different groups here. One's a public school foundation, the other one is a school board. The nice thing here is that you're not getting paid to do this work, so you have immense amounts of credibility in Salem. You're here for only one reason, and that's for kids. When you're talking, of course, try to be brief. It's not about you. And it's not about the legislator, it's about our kids. And also, the legislator's times, particularly during the session, is limited. And then, of course, you know, this is not, you know, like brain surgery. It's not really difficult. You want to interact with these people the same way that you want to be interacted with. When people, you know, approach a school board member and yell at them and berate them for what's going on in the schools, it's really hard to be receptive to that. And the same is true for legislators. So always express appreciation. Approach them in the way that you want to be approached. Oh, I got a yellow light. I got to get moving. Okay. This still isn't the right one.
A couple minutes.
Oh, it's all right. I can wrap it up really quick.
It's on 18 seconds. We'll add a couple minutes.
Then I'm out of time.
No, it's okay.
That's it. You're done. No. Oh no, this is the amazing slide, and it's the top bullet point here. My goodness, when they explained this, I was like, I wish I knew this in 2014 and 2015 when I was doing this work. The first thing you come up with, this is the formula. Come up with a positive story. There's tons of them. Tons of examples. Identify the key need in that story, and then have a specific ask. What is the specific legislative thing that we want them to do? That's it. That's how you tell the story. Positive story, identify the need. What's the specific legislative action we need them to do? I mean, you don't have to be eloquent. You don't have to be super smart to do that. It's not hard to build that story. I wish I had known that years ago, but that's it. Yeah, be personal. Talk about your personal experience, because the legislators, they don't know. I mean, you are the experts for your kids and your community. Advocacy is ongoing, absolutely. So this is something that you'll do all the time. I would say that during the session, it's about telling the story. Out of session, it's about developing relationship. And so you're flipping back and forth. Right now, we got a couple months where you can build relationship. And then it's going to be advocacy time. And then the last one, advocate your district by putting it in a statewide perspective. Yeah, really good advice there. So think globally, act locally. So tell a local story, but scale it up if you can. Let's see. I don't want to use up any more of your time because you want to have, and I talked about that, you know, your platform, that you're here for kids. You have an immense amount of moral authority to advocate. No one is going to question why you're showing up. Okay? I think that's it. Stay updated. Yes. ORED News, you can subscribe to those, particularly you, school board members. Follow us on social media. Check out our website. Attend future webinars. Yes. And yeah, you have your local legislative policy committee, Clyde Root from over in Lebanon. He is your representative. And so connect with him. That is it. I am Red. We're here for you. Done.
Thank you
made
so
it.
much, Vince.
I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
I think we have discussions or small group discussions, and maybe we can have, if you're going to float around in those, that might be helpful.
Oh, I do want to talk about the 2 handouts. I did give you handouts. So this is information from the Legislative Roadshow. You'll notice that there are QR codes that will take you to various parts on the website. This is a document that's developed by the Legislative Policy Committee. This is OSBA's legislative priorities. So this is our North Star. This is what we're working on. So that's the last piece. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll float around. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vince. Again, it was really great to hear the presentation over the summer, and I'm excited that we're able to bring it to both the boards to think about how to advocate, and without saying like what to advocate exactly for, because that's not what we do. But and also to add in, I also serve on the OSBA Caucus of Color as the vice president and the legislative policy committee representative for that area too. So it's another like connection point for that. And I'm in that position for a couple more months. So just want to let you all know that. And do you want to do the next part, Ryan?
Sure. So Angela and I had an opportunity to meet and develop some questions that you'll see on your agenda. As per the usual, we have to mix everybody up. So in a second, I am going to have Nina and Judah switch spots. I'm going to have Sammy and Monty switch spots. And I'm going to have Erica and Chris switch spots. Because ideally, you're going to be in groups of 3 with a CSD board member, because there's 7 of us. There's 21 people, groups of 3. I did the math, and that should work. It's not going to be exact. You may have to move around a little bit more, but generally speaking, that gets you to the spot you're going to want to be. You'll have about half an hour to work through the 5 questions that are on your agenda. Again, those questions for the audience are: what did you learn, and was there anything that surprised you? What additional information would you like to have? That would be good for you to stick around for, Vince, as we do our share out. What actions are you interested in taking as an individual or as a board? What are areas you feel others may better address? There was a long list of ways you can engage with your legislators, and some may feel more comfortable for you than others, so we put a question in about that. And then what support do you need to implement those actions? So again, Vince already gave you homework. We're actually going to add to that in some way. So that's the intention. Are there questions from anyone before we move into the discussions? And it is at 8 o'clock, so students, you are more than welcome to stay. And at the same time, it is 8 o'clock and you may have homework, so we always give you the opportunity, and this would be a good transition point for you. But again, you're always more than welcome to stay for the discussion. Anything else? All right. So we've kind of given the directions. We're going to move into the discussion, and then we'll call you back together afterwards for the synthesis and key points and themes, and then finally our closing. All right, ready, go.
If there's, and also for folk online, it's going to be really hard to hear because everybody's talking. So I just wanted to make sure people knew what was going on online.
So.
So that we have the chair to do some role with it.
All right, we have about 5 more minutes for discussion. All right. So we are.
We have 2 years to get it on the ballot. All right. We'll figure it out.
I hate to. I don't have a gavel. I'm not the chair. So we are going to take a 10-minute. No, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We will be back at 8:30 to continue the remainder of our agenda, which is the share out of themes. But folks needed a quick break, so we'll be back at 8:30.
Okay, everyone. Hi, everyone. If we can start getting back to our seats. Nobody wants to stop talking. Maybe Ryan's deeper voice.
We are going to get started again.
Everybody to their seats.
Come on, Sammy.
Sammy's saying to do the clap. If everybody can return to their seats so I don't have to do that clap thing. No, I mean like the clap. Yeah, I don't have a gavel, so Kim stopped bringing it out for me because I never use it. It's fine. I wouldn't have even used it now. Okay, are we back? Okay,
We're
we are
back.
Cool.
So we had time set aside now to share out the conversation from each group. So I didn't ask you to identify a reporter before we started, but I know you're able to do that. And it looks like Shauna's going to go first.
Well, apparently I've been nominated from our group, but thank you so much, Alicia and Monty, for joining me in the conversation. Do you want us to just share a few high points, go through each of the questions? All right.
High points, please.
High points.
Yeah.
Okay, not every single thought that came up. We had a wonderful conversation. Let's think about action steps or things that would be helpful in terms of moving forward from what we learned. Some of the things that came up were, I think, shared excitement and enthusiasm for engaging in this work as individuals, boards, and collaboratively across boards, and thinking about what are some of the scaffolds that would help make that possible for folks, because it can be intimidating, as you shared, Vince. Thank you for addressing that and mentioning that. And taking baby steps, as you said, Alicia, can really help folks engage in ways that they feel comfortable. So a couple of as being helpful or potentially helpful for folks would be things like having ways to easily identify local and regional legislators, like knowing where to find that information. I know you pointed to some, Vince, as well as where to best follow information or to sign up for information that might show schedules of where folks are showing up in formal and informal settings. And so if there was some effort to cull that information, even like who to follow or where, whether it's social media or other newsletters coming out that share that really concrete information, might make it easier for folks to show up at a coffee shop, for instance, if you knew someone was going to be there, to connect with them. Some other things that came up were the need for, or an ask around, shared talking points or even shared stories, especially for new board members or trustees, in terms of folks who are gathering those stories and learning those stories themselves, but may not have them yet. And so knowing both talking points around what are the roles of their own role, or understanding representing themselves as an individual versus a member of a board or an organization, to do that well and effectively. And then some of those shared stories or talking points that it might be helpful to have as folks are moving forward and taking some of those steps. Did I miss anything that you would like to say out?
Maybe like the emails or the postcards or that sort of thing, so you can just...
Oh, and then scaffolds around thinking about language that could be sent out, whether through emails, postcards, even maybe a shared legislative day or field trip of going up together, or even gathering or taking letters, postcards, emails, things like that, and having shared language that would make it easier for folks to engage in that kind of outreach. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
That was a great list. Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Again, any of the questions or the themes that you heard, additional information that you would like to know, with Vince in the room this evening?
Sure, I'm happy to go.
Perfect.
We had some great conversations as well. One thing that really surprised our group was that absenteeism was in the top 3 issues, as opposed to being probably lower on the list. We also talked about additional information and education would be helpful about some of the root causes and what specific needs are related to those top 3. And then we were interested in current funding allocations and how they relate to the top 3 goals. Anyone want to add anything else there? Okay. And then we also talked about some specific individual actions we could take, things like letter writing, talking to other community members, learning about other community members' stories. And then we also talked about large-scale actions to consider, which would be learning more about what actions already take place, like Rally at the Capitol kind of days that we could just raise awareness about and join. And then we talked about collaborations, continuing collaborations between the foundation board, the school board, others, such as perhaps the PTAs. And then we finally talked about what additional supports we need, and it really came back to increasing collaboration, education, and gathering additional information. Yeah. Anything else, Jahan or Tuda? Yeah. Thanks.
I might just want to add one thing. Like, there are a lot of events happening in Corvallis that we could be engaged in. Like we mentioned that maybe the library, sometimes they do town halls. And as a board members, we don't know about like when it's happening and what's the goal of those town halls. So maybe tap into the things that already happening and see how we can be engaged in them. You know, to speed the process and be involved.
And just so you all know, we're going to try to get the recording to the PTOs and PTAs too. That way they have this information as well as some of the like the charter school board and stuff. So because everybody was interested, and so I'm thankful that you brought them up.
Well, we had a lot of the similar thoughts and discussions, really the idea that there's a lot of good information here that could be the foundation for how to communicate and where to communicate and who to communicate with. So can we, and when I say we, kind of generally the 2 boards have distill it down into maybe like a 1-sheeter so it's really clear. People are really busy, but I know there's a lot of passion about this in the community. Reference previous, budget meeting and board meetings where the community participated, and making it as easy and straightforward for them to know what they could do, who to contact, send an email, a postcard. The idea of like the rally at the Capitol, we had the idea of, okay, well, there's lobbying days. Sammy talked about that. So can we, get the bus and get the people and communicate? One other thing we talked about is how to engage the PTAs. And so I think that you referenced that, but is that a role that, individuals in this room potentially would be interested in, reaching out so that we could get this information disseminated and having that conversation one-to-one or in small groups, I think makes people more comfortable with the idea of taking on an advocacy role.
I just wanted to add one thing around the question about what surprised you. I think it was a surprise, but it just stuck with me when you shared about storytelling, and you summarized it around it's about telling a story, demonstrating impact and need, and then have an ask.
A specific ask.
That is exactly what we do for our donors. So it's the exact same process. It's just the ask is about supporting our students through legislative action versus supporting with a financial contribution and a donation. So it's the same thing. It really struck me the way you summarized it. So it just kind of underlined the sort of alignment, I think. So it's just interesting.
This will be a joint sharing, right? Talking points for sure. And especially when we talk about talking to our legislators, Sarah and Sarah, like, I don't know what else different, what we would say that's different than what they've already, the work they've done. So I guess guidance along those lines. We talked about where is OEA and what stand do they take on this, and how can we work with them on that, because they're a very strong voice in our state. With absentees, I thought that was really interesting. I love that it's a priority, because as part of my work in the district, that was a really frustrating part of my work, was trying to work with kids and getting them to school and not having a lot of tools to get them to school. And we talked about the summer program and how they've had great success with getting kids to school. And so what are they doing right at CHS that, or, you know, Matt and his team, to get kids there, and how can we use that as a way to advocate? And then also, and we're all talking about, you know, different avenues of where our voices can be heard. I would love to do that, but I want a buddy with me, you know, that can stand there next to me, or, you know, help with answering questions. And so, you know, how can we organize that?
That sounded good.
I would second everything, of course, that Chris said. The other thing, we found the focus on assessment too vague for us to really get a handle. Accountability, sorry. Yeah, too vague for us to really get a handle on what we might do in that way. And I think that covered just about everything. Yeah.
I'll speak to this, and then I'm also looking at the superintendent for he could probably speak to this because he experiences the pain. But accountability is really about streamlining the expectations on school districts. Of course, we want to improve student outcomes. That's what we're all working towards. But right now, school districts are suffering under a lot of unfunded mandated reporting that is really, really challenging, takes a lot of staff time, and it can be really, really stunting for small districts. And I don't know, I look to you, Ryan, for a little more detail there.
Yeah, we annually we submit about 200 reports to the state and to the feds, which requires us to have staff just to address accountability measures and reporting. And then the accountability piece, right now there is a work group looking at accountability, the ways that we're assessing our schools and the progress that our schools are making. And I think for OSBA, it's making sure that there's a voice and a seat at the table for school boards. So as you think about your story, I think your stories are probably more directly tied to the first two priorities than the third.
It sounds like we need some accountability for the accountability.
That's the story right there.
Yeah. Our group kind of talked about how we could improve the connections and the understandings between each step of like the financial process of like setting up the budget, and because kind of right now the families don't really understand how like the school board gets their funding and how the school boards are like underfunded by the states. And we also talked about kind of individually what actions we would like to take is relating to the kicker, which is something I learned is where
got off topic a little.
Yeah.
we were right on topic.
That is on topic, actually.
Or like people get their money returned if the state collects. People get their money returned when this money exceeds 2% of what they forecasted, and then this isn't the best way to like make things work, because otherwise the schools get underfunded because of that. So, yeah.
And I'll just add, this is the exact model right here you just saw of what was a lot of the energy around our group, which is we are missing a really large constituency in the advocacy piece, which is the kids that are going to be the voters who do not know how the money is coming in to fund the PE and the art and the music and the library that they really love. And so we were talking about the need to bring the education and the action down to the level of the students whose parents will follow, by the way, because if their kids enroll in and they participate in some kind of legislative advocacy, parents follow where their kids go. So what can we do to have those kids be showing up, not just making the ask because it's their classrooms and it's their teachers, it's their staff, but also making the ask because they understand and they're putting Salem on notice that they're coming in as they're going to be educated voters. When they get to that age, they're going to know and understand the process, and they're going to be prepared to take action. And so we want that, right? We want that education to be happening at that level. And so we talked about the logistics of what that could look like, and we don't have a plan for it. We just think we should do it. So, but yeah, and then we had this conversation about the kicker, and then our student rep just came and educated all of you guys about the kicker. And so in about 30 minutes, I think we proved that this would work. If we can just get to the classroom, they'll show up and they'll do all the speaking for us. So we're going to figure out how to do that.
Kim, can you add 10 minutes? Thank you.
About student, oh dear. Our group, specifically me, I spoke about my thoughts on trying to help take action as an individual. And I wanted to educate myself on how legislation passes, how I can help voice my opinion on the subjects that I care about, and learn about my local politicians that I can speak with. And as a collective group, we came up with the idea of having a sort of group project working on that specific idea. So in specific, there is a class at my school for government, and it culminates in writing a paper to a representative for Oregon. Is that right? And my idea is that I would propose to the teacher and potentially the principal about creating a larger scaled group project for that at the end of that class that would not only be on a individual basis, but as multiple kids that would be interested in learning more about that specific topic, how legislation gets passed, our representatives, and making a difference in specific. So not just one individual writing to a politician or a elected official or representative, but actively joining those conversations, perhaps having a field trip to go to Salem and attend those and speak to electives. I think that that would be an amazing opportunity to learn and be a great step towards having those students be a bigger part of making a difference. So.
And there was another idea too that came up with working with the foundation. Did you want to talk about it? About the application?
Thank you for sharing that. I loved how you explained it so well. And we, in our group, we just talked about how these kinds of projects are what we really like funding. And so I was just explaining the process, and I really hope that we can see applications come from you guys for something like this. Yeah.
It might not have to be just a one-off. It could be a opportunity for multiple sets of kids to enjoy, not just, you know, one time for me and a couple people that are just wrapping up the class, but it could be an opportunity on maybe a yearly basis for our school to go to, Salem and, you know, attend those conversations. I think that that would be an excellent use of school time and would really make a difference.
Okay, before Ryan closes this out, I just really loved hearing what everybody had to say, and just the energy in this room right now, I think, is really cool too to be part of, and hearing from the students and both the groups, and that you all stayed extra this evening to be part of these conversations. So thank you, and I just want to say my appreciation to the foundation board as well for joining in these conversations as well. So yeah.
Yeah, what Lou just shared really sums it up for me as well. I always appreciate working with both boards because there's some incredible thinkers amongst these two groups of people, and our students always impress me and amaze me. So this has just been a really fulfilling night, and I really look forward to the continued work with all of you. I took notes, and I know Angela did too, as well as Kim. And so we will meet with the leadership of both boards to talk about how to move this information and these plans forward. Again, thank you to Vince for representing OSBA tonight and being a part of this group. Did you want to say something?
I would just say I'd love to stay connected to this group as you guys continue on this journey and just be the liaison between our organization and this work. So yeah, this is really exciting. And Harry, I totally, like, in Technicolor could see 2 buses from Corvallis pulling up in front of the Capitol and emptying out, and kids fanning out throughout the Capitol as you were talking. It's just a wonderful idea. Thank you.
And just before we say goodnight, I just going to add one more thing, as I love that image too. Vince, I was like picturing that when they were talking earlier. And I love the tie-in to like classwork too, and like moving towards graduation in the same process as advocacy. I think that's amazing. And there's during the last budget season, the last couple years, it's felt a little bit hopeless for a lot of folk as far as funding and a lot of challenges. And I think conversations like this are really important to remind people there are things that we can do collectively as a community and as individuals. And hopefully this is helpful for the community as they're watching this video later on and thinking of how they can be involved as well. So just want to say thank you again for spending the evening with us.